Perhaps the one thing that the boomers are really right on is communism. Communism is evil. They might have a bit of an obsession with it sometimes, but the general point is correct. And friend of the channel, Vaush, is also evil, and he is of course a communist. It's sort of a chicken and the egg situation. Is he a bad person because he's a communist, or is he a communist because he's a bad person? The realistic answer is probably a bit of both. The little I know of his personal life shows that communism is probably just a good outlet for his moral depravity. But the fact that he's a communist allows that moral depravity to get worse and worse. After adopting such a horrific ideology, it doesn't take long for him to get to statements like this.
I'll say it, there are legit reasons to support Al-Qaeda.
If you haven't seen that clip before, you're probably thinking that that's out of context, maybe that it's a joke, or something like that. But no, that's really what he said, and even worse, that's really what he meant. You see, according to Vaush, America's just so bad that you have to endorse groups all the way up to that. He can't just oppose what America's doing. He can't even just support groups that oppose America. He has to support the worst groups that oppose America. I did a full video on that if you want to see all the details of what Vaush said, link in the description. And that is the state that Vaush has worked himself into. He's just that much of a bad person. Atrocities are just acceptable to him, and I doubt that there's much of a limit to what atrocities are acceptable. Now, you probably think that, that's an over-exaggeration. No, he can't really think that. He must think that atrocities are bad. I mean, he's a libertarian socialist. He's constantly going on about how bad the Soviet Union was, and that's not what he actually wants. But if you actually dig into his ideology a little bit, you'll find really quickly that his ideology is identical to what the Soviets did, and he would produce very similar results, because he has the same thought process that got them to that point. I'm not just talking about communism, though that alone probably would be enough. But there's another vital piece of the puzzle. There's, in addition to that, his consequentialism, which is the idea that the rightness or wrongness of an action is based off of the effects of that action and what that produces, not on anything intrinsic to that. At first glance, this ethical theory might seem reasonable. After all, doesn't it make sense to focus on the actual tangible results and not abstract notions of right and wrong? The issue is, however, this is really an abolishment of morality altogether. It makes the individual the god, deciding right and wrong, just like in the Garden of Eden. It's literally something out of the mouth of the serpent. Nothing is any longer out of bounds. It's only a question of which particular ends will achieve which particular means. This is why we can so easily see Vaush talking about the legitimate reasons to support certain organizations. In his recent debate with Count Dankula, he actually put quite succinctly and quite horrifically just where exactly this ethical theory takes him.
And I do criticize the optics of Antifa pretty often on this channel. I don't know if they do the best job of doing what they're trying to do, though I generally agree with the
What would be an
sentiment.
example of bad optics from Antifa in your mind, Vaush?
Well, all I care
Or bad
about
actions or whatever.
All I care about is preserving a good society. I'm a consequentialist. If I thought that Antifa running out into the street and beating the ever-loving out of everyone with a MAGA hat made society better, I would support it. But I don't think that. I think that in addition to causing suffering to people who are probably too stupid to know that they shouldn't be wearing a MAGA hat or believing in Trump to begin with, it also does a lot to make our optics look really bad. It makes us look terrible when that happens. The fact that Antifa these days, like the Antifa boys will go out there and they'll up the streets and throw bricks through windows and turn over trash cans. Now, do they do that often? Not nearly as often as people on the internet pretend, but they do it, and it gets filmed, sometimes by themselves. They're real proud of it. They upload it and makes them look awful. They look like a bunch of college sophomores, like anemic college sophomores dressed up in their dad's old biker gear, you know?
Nothing there should be particularly surprising. That should be what you'd expect. He's a communist, so are they. He has to support them. But you notice what his problem was with Antifa? Their optics. He doesn't have any problem with them assaulting people. His only problem is that assaulting people looks bad for communists. It makes it look like that communists are bad people. It makes it look like communists like to assault people, which he says immediately after saying that he would literally support assaulting every single person in America that wears a MAGA hat. This is, of course, just the logical extension of what progressives have been saying for years about the whole punch a Nazi thing. If it's okay to punch a Nazi because Nazis are really, really bad, why isn't it okay to punch a conservative if conservatives are just a bit bad? And for that matter, why isn't it okay to punch a liberal, as, the famous graffiti says, if liberals are only a little bad? It's okay to punch anyone in this mindset if they're doing the bad things, and if punching them will get you a little closer to the good things. His problem is that Antifa shows what communists are really like, what they actually want to do. He agrees with them. He agrees that their tactics are at least in principle okay, because he has to agree their tactics are at least in principle okay, because there is no type of tactic which he could possibly disagree with once he's a consequentialist. Once you're a consequentialist, anything is permissible. It does not only allow anything, it can even obligate some of the worst imaginable things. It doesn't just make the atrocities that happened in the French Revolution, or the Russian Revolution, or the Cambodian Revolution, or the Great Leap Forward, or any of the other famous left-wing atrocities. It doesn't just make them likely, it makes them morally obligatory. Because if you really think that the utopia is just around the corner, and all it's going to take is a couple million more dead, then the consequences of that are justify it. It not only justifies it, it obligates it. Because what's a few million dead in the mind of the communist when that means the rest of humanity will be liberated for all eternity? This worldview utterly shreds concepts of justice and morality, because all it's about is, in the mind of the planner, fine-tuning society to get the perfect outcomes. Individual actions don't really matter at all. All that matters is that the right outcome can be engineered. This is a particularly potent way of allowing for Vaush to justify, and many other lefties, all their personal issues. It's even better than the traditional libertarian Lamau, just let me do whatever I want. It's none of yo business. Because that at least leaves open the possibility that in some sort of private, non-governmental sense, there is something wrong with what you're doing. But consequentialism utterly destroys any notion of that. Under this worldview, any of Vaush's or any of anyone else's personal issues are utterly irrelevant, since he's just helping to bring along the revolution. As Vaush said, all that he cares about is if this will produce a better society. So, under this system, why does it even matter if, say, some famous scientist working on a cure to a disease abuses children? How could the couple of children that he could scar for life have any relevance whatsoever on the millions of lives that he could save? Anything can be justified by this, anywhere from the personal actions of one person to the collective atrocities of an entire society. The difference between Vaush and the USSR isn't that one is authoritarian and one is libertarian. The difference is that the USSR actually implemented their theory, and Vaush hasn't been able to yet, and never will. And that is actually the irony behind all this, because Vaush actually sent out a tweet recently that I think is really emblematic of what his real role is. Because though he does like to LARP as a revolutionary, and he does actually probably think he is one to some extent, and he certainly holds the ideology of an evil revolutionary, the reality is, despite all of that, he's really just a tool to reinforce the establishment's power. He said, "If you're a leftist and you believe Tucker Carlson represents your interests better than the establishment, Democrats, you're an active threat to our movement." The issue isn't his disavowal of Tucker Carlson. The point is that he's clearly just a patsy who will always just reinforce the establishment's power. Oh, he'll say that he really hates them, but at the end of the day, he'll make sure you're voting for the Democratic Party. Thanks for watching. Please donate to my Subscribe Star if you enjoy these videos, and also, if you haven't seen it yet, Also, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. And if you haven't seen it, I did a collab that just came out yesterday on the YouTube channel A Dormant Dynasty, formerly known as The Asian Capitalists, talking about the problems with libertarianism and liberal conservatism, link in the description. And a special thanks to my donors, Seth Apex, Emmett Vestry, Haxorius, Quo Pregranator, The Right Cafe, Charismatic Byzantine, and all my other donors. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for watching, and goodbye.